Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tampa. We're so grateful to be able to gather together again in community. And we're so glad to see all of you here today. I hope that you find peace and joy and satisfaction in this service. I'm Fran Davin, your worship associate for today. And the Worship Association and the committee has a treat for you today. They have invited the Reverend Father Desmond Daly to be our guest speaker. I think many of you know Father Daly, and a little bit of bio about him is included in your order of service. We don't mention in there that Father Daly was born and reared in Dublin, Ireland, and I think when you listen to him speak, you'll guess that he is probably not a native of Tampa. Candy Gale, our president, has asked me to make some announcements. This is an important one. This is a really important one. She's waving from the back. The congregational meeting will be next Sunday, May 1st, starting at 11:45. So don't sneak out after the service. We'll be voting on board members, committee members, and ministry members, and also a new covenant. So come one, come all, and help us steer the direction of our blessed community for the next year. Second announcement. We need help with our children. We are going to hire an RE assistant and nursery workers, but we need a good, thriving parental committee and committee members from the church itself. So please contact the Board of Trustees at uutampa.org and lend your leadership so that we can rebuild our youth program. Before we begin our service, let us take a moment for our stone ritual. I placed the first stone this morning to represent the joys we have all had this past week. The second stone is to represent any sorrows that we have shared this past week. And the third stone is to mark our intentions for the coming week. So let us begin with our opening words for our service today. Come into this circle. Come into this circle of love and justice. Come into the community of mercy, holiness, and health. Come and may you know peace and joy.
UUA leadership up in Boston. She's been there a long time, but this is hers. It's called A House for Dreams. We, all of us, build houses for our dreams. The masonry and lumber, glass and tiles, a solid form wherein we see our hopes, a shelter and protection for our growth. This house shall be a dwelling place for courage, for integrity, for love, engendered, nourished by a family that speaks of we and means all humankind. These walls shall represent the privacy and dignity of individuals, the open doors, a welcome to all people, all ages and all generations. The windows shall keep light of inquiry illumining from outside and within. May all words spoken here be born of love, and energy rekindle in the hearts of those who dreamed this house, who plied the tools and paid the price to actualize the dream. May dreaming never cease for those within who know the world to be a troubled place, but dare to struggle with imperfectness toward that brighter hope, that better day. Let memories add warmth, a heritage, a quilted patchwork stitched with history, of kindliness, of daring for the good, of funny moments, jokes and smiles and tears. This is a precious place, as every home that shelters those who love and strive and share. Its blessing is in lives that meet within, in living, learning, caring, sheltered there. Thank you, T. Well, here we go. First of all, I've already been introduced, but let me introduce myself again. My name is Desmond Daly. I was born in Dublin, Ireland, in May 1940. You wouldn't think so, would you? I used to walk I was born only one block from one of the only two Unitarian churches in Ireland. I walked by that church on my way to school every day as a kid. Not for one moment knowing, of course, that how significant it would be to me in the last years of my life. So, out with it, I'm an octogenarian and feel it every day. Next month, I'll be 82 and will celebrate it with you, my UU friends. At this point, I must share with you something very personal. I ran away from home at the age of 18. I truly loved my parents, brother and sisters, but everyday life at home was unbearable because of dysfunctionality. The relevance of that, of what I've just said, will become clear later in the sermon. I was raised a Roman Catholic and attended Catholic schools for the whole of my education until my ordination as a Catholic priest in 1966. My studies took me to Birmingham and the University of England, Freiburg University in Switzerland, Loyola in New Orleans, and the University of California in Berkeley. Altogether, I spent 9 years of my life in these seminaries and post-grad studies. Boy, was I happy to get out of there. To finish going to school and to start working as a pastor is what I wanted. I wasn't very great at the studies. Philosophy, I was okay at philosophy. Theology, I just didn't get a lot of it. But I got a fabulous education there. After my ordination, I served in many parishes in Paris, London, and the United States until my retirement from active ministry in 2010. I continued to serve different parishes on an as-needed basis until 2013. At that time, my life changed radically. My first visit here to this great community was a true eye-opener. I had been invited to visit the church by a UU friend of mine, Kay Cahalan. There's a whole other story there, but many of you know it already. The preacher was the Reverend Doak Mansfield. His message was clear, flowing, down to earth, and utterly inspiring for me. I kept on coming back. My dear people, many of you already know my story because I now know many of you so well. Tom and Mary Lou, Dan and Ann Bagley, Joe and Deborah Adlis, Candy and Russell Patterson, Liz Blue, and many, many others, and Siobhan. Remember, friends, I was brought up in the Catholic Church with all of its dogmas, rituals, commandments, and the total service that I gladly gave to it as a pastor. I still treasure it very much. It formed me spiritually. That said, spiritual religious formation is a lifelong, ongoing thing. It can never remain static for any of us. Just like the universe in which we live. All that said, I now find my mind, my heart, and my spirit enlivened and broadened by the 7 principles of the Unitarian Universalist Church. I have found here friendship, kinship, comfort, inspiration in those principles, as have all of you here today. The reason that most of us, probably all of us, are here today is that we feel the need for something to give rational direction to the reality of our own lives, other than creeds, dogmatic teachings, and so on. We may have already been involved in other religious environments that have been included in our search for a religious home, but didn't give us the solid direction that we deeply yearn for in our quest to provide for the spiritual needs of ourselves and those of our children. I have to share with you that what interests me the most about the UU Church is its wise and purposeful willingness to source its wealth of wisdom from the spiritual culture of past ages, whether it be Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, or other religious and or spiritual cultures of the past or the present. For example, some weeks ago, April 3rd to be exact, our pastor, Reverend Jim McComber, gave a quite moving and inspiring sermon on the parables of the Good Samaritan from one of the four Gospels in the Christian New Testament, the Gospel of Luke. He brought the reality of the parable into the moment by depicting the efforts of a poor, undocumented Mexican farm worker somewhere in our country coming to the aid of a hapless traveler. The sources of the wealth and wisdom and moral standing of this now worldwide Unitarian fellowship, it's almost everywhere. Probably not North and South Poles, but a lot of other places. It's phenomenal. That's the only word I know how to describe it. And be patient, you all know these, but I want to enunciate them for all of us. Here they are as described by the UUA. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic women and men which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves, the golden rule which is common to all of the major religions of the world. Humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against the idolatries of the mind and spirit. Spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. They are the principles of our religion. Let me go on from here to describe to you some of my own pastoral experiences during my now 56 years of experience as a pastor. As I explained to you earlier, even though I retired from full-time ministry in 2010, I continued to work part-time in parishes other than the one from which I retired as pastor, Christ the King Church in South Tampa. I would also conduct services as needed in the Catholic Student Center at USF. I actually finally took up residence at Most Holy Redeemer on Linebaugh Avenue, not far from where I now live in Lutz. Most of my part-time work was in giving our parishioners pastoral counseling. I must say, and I say this really seriously, that I thoroughly enjoyed it because I wasn't distracted by having to do parish work, church administration. I look around here and I see some eyes rolling because you've experienced that. Not easy, especially in the UU community. And having to deal with church committees and business managers, which have always been the bane of my life, and got into trouble a lot because I couldn't do it very well. I always had to have a parish manager who got me out of so much trouble. During this time of pastoral spiritual counseling, I came to a much fuller realization, awareness, that many, surprisingly many of my people suffered from a condition in which they had very much, sometimes completely, lost control of themselves, control of their tempers, with their families, their jobs, even their best friends. It's sad. I would strongly suggest to them that they seek more clinically directed professional help for their problems. Unfortunately, most people just told me that they either already thought about it but had found that it was too expensive and are not covered by their insurance. That's sad. It's awful to see people who struggled with that. This is a very sad fact about our American health care system. It had led to many recent noteworthy tragedies in our society. In my life, I've had the good fortune to live in countries that have universal free health care. Which brings me to the story of how I eventually discovered a powerful way of helping people to help themselves. And I used this when I first discovered it. I used it in my pastoral counseling. In some of the parishes I led, there was a very special ministry that helped people who suffered addictions. Alcoholics Anonymous, a so-called 12-step program for people addicted to alcohol. There now exists in the world many such 12-step programs for people who suffer addictions to substances or unhealthy behaviors. Alcoholics Anonymous, Drug Addicts Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Codependents Anonymous. That's a strange one. You need to know about that one. I started it in some parishes and very effective in family work. LGBTQ plus Anonymous, Emotions Anonymous. And believe it or not, I have heard that there is talk among some clinical psychologists today of creating a 12-step program for people who are addicted to religious cults. One thing about our UU fellowship is certain. We are the very essence of religious openness, common sense, and just plain old getting along with each other. That said, even we have our ups and downs, but we do get over it. There's absolutely nothing cultic in the practice of our religion. All of the above programs have one thing in common, namely that many people lose control over their lives for one reason or another, but that there is a way for those same people to regain that control by making a decision to help themselves. By the way, I was very impressed when our worship committee invited Carrie Zeiss to speak here a couple of weeks ago. Carrie is a representative of Tampa Bay Thrives, which is a local mental health coalition. At this point, I must tell you that spiritual direction, which I'm qualified in, got my degree and everything in it, is basically psychological help. But we can't call ourselves psychologists. We call ourselves pastoral counselors. At this point, and with your patience, I want to come to the close of my talk today by sharing with you the steps of the program that helped me personally as a pastor to help these, and these are the 12 steps of EA. First of all, we admitted we were powerless over our emotions, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, whatever that power might be. Not necessarily a God for those who are atheists, but there's some power out there, maybe a friendship, maybe a gathering like this. The program itself could be your higher power. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision, a real decision, to turn our will and our lives over to the care of whatever God that we had and understood. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, being very honest with ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. I don't know how often, as a pastor, that people just came into the office who are not Catholics and just wanted to do their 5th step. I'm talking about hundreds. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings, to remove them. 8, made a list of all persons that we had harmed and became willing to make amends to all of them. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would hinder them or others. Have to be very careful about that one. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. That, as a way of life, promptly admit our wrongs. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And finally, 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message and to practice these principles in all our affairs. In this very last step of EA, there's one word that stands out for us most especially, the word principles. Members of our UU fellowship know the word principles very well because it is the word that binds our fellowship with each other, not only with our fellow members in this community, but with all humankind. For me, there arose a new awareness of spirituality that was based on a life guided not by dogmas, but by a set of principles that lead us to a fuller life of compassion, openness of spirit, unconditional acceptance of each other's life experiences, trials and tribulations, and mindfulness of the importance of community. Community is everything, folks. Balanced spiritual and social community is everything, everything. And we have it here in these geodesic domes and community center located at 11400 Morris Bridge Road. My dear friends, thank you for listening to me today. I really praise each and every one of you. I appreciate you. And may God bless you all. Thank you.
Please stand as you are willing or able and join us in Shabbat Shalom We introduced this song last week, and we will sing it the same way to continue to be comfortable with this piece. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Desmond. That was just such an inspiring talk. Thank you. We'll now take up the offering, which helps to sustain our operations of our blessed community. Our closing words this morning are from Forest Church and adapted for today. Each of us, of course, must assume the responsibility for awakening. Others may be responsible for our being born, but what we make of our lives, how deeply and intensively we live, is our responsibility and ours alone. Having accepted life as a gift for ourselves, we are then charged to revere the presence of this same gift in others. And go now in peace.